Hello and welcome to my channel. In this lecture we'll discuss the cardiac muscle. So let's start. The cardiac muscle, which is the heart, of course, or the scientific name for it is the myocardium, is a striated muscle, and it's involuntary and constitutes the main tissue of the wall of the heart. The muscle itself is sandwiched between an outer layer of membrane called the pericardium and the inner layer or inner lining layer of the heart chambers, which is the endocardium, and the muscle itself is called the myocardium. The muscle fibers of the myocardium are interconnected by intercalated disks, which are special junctions that allow for the rapid spread of impulses along the heart muscle to ensure an efficient contraction, and it's encased by collagen fibers and other substances that form the extracellular matrix. The cardiac muscle resembles the skeletal muscle in its contraction, but there are some differences. The stimulation of the cardiac muscle results in a cardiac action potential and the release of calcium afterwards, and the calcium is stored in a special apparatus which is called the Sarcoplasmic Reticulum all over the heart muscle. The rise of the calcium causes the myofilaments, which are the actin and myosin of the cardiac muscle, to slide on each other, and this is called the excitation contraction coupling. Now, as mentioned before, the cardiac muscle is sandwiched between an outer and inner layer of membrane, the epicardium and endocardium. The endocardium lines the chambers of the heart, the atria and ventricles, and covers the cardiac valves, and joins with the endothelium that lines the blood vessels. And the epicardium is actually the inner layer of the surrounding sac of the heart, which is the pericardial sac that protects and lubricates the movements or the contractions of the heart muscle. The sheets of the myocardial muscle that surrounds the left ventricle, for example, are closest. Those who are closest to the endocardium are oriented perpendicular to those closest to the epicardium, as you can see here. This to make sure that there is symmetrical and efficient contraction of the heart to squeeze the blood inside in several directions simultaneously. Means that with each contraction of the ventricle, the heart gets shortened longitudinally from apex to base, and at the same time radially becomes narrower from side to side with a twisting motion, as if wringing out a damp cloth. Now this ensures maximum possible amount of blood to be squeezed from the heart with each myocardial contraction, as you can see in this drawing. The contraction of the heart is powerful and consumes energy, and this requires the constant flow of blood to provide oxygen and nutrients. This blood comes from the coronary arteries, and they were discussed in details in the thorax section of anatomy. They arise from the ascending aorta and supply the heart, and the venous drainage at the same time is drained by a system of veins that drain into the coronary sinus that drains into the atrium. So it gets its blood from the coronary arteries and drains its blood to the coronary veins. If we discuss the microanatomy of the heart, the cardiac muscle cells called cardio myocytes, and the cells are surrounded by extracellular matrix. There's also among the muscles of the heart, or the cardiomyocytes of the heart, special modified cardiomyocytes called the pacemaker cells. They have the phenomenon of automaticity, means that they can contract on their own, and they have the ability to receive nerve supply to regulate their functions. The pacemaker cells are a special type of muscle fibers, but weakly contractile without sarcomeres, and they connect to the neighboring contractile cells via gap junctions to ensure the fast spread of ions among them. And it starts with the SA node, the sinoatrial node, AV node, the bundle of His, the Purkinje fibers. The sinoatrial node, which is the main node, is positioned on the wall of the right atrium near the entrance of the superior vena cava. The impulses that originates from these nodes spread all over the heart and responsible for the contraction, and the pacemakers are distributed throughout the heart and responsible for spontaneous generation of impulses that's sent out as electrical impulse. They also have the ability to receive and respond to electrical impulses from the brain via autonomic nerves, of course. And lastly, they must be able to transfer electrical impulses from cell to cell by means of the gap junctions present in the heart and the intercalated disks that transmit contractions between the various cardiomyocytes of the heart. It also contains, the heart also contains continuation of the SA node of the nodal tissue, which is Purkinje fibers, to spread it all over the ventricles. For the efficient contraction to happen, each cardiomyocyte needs to contact in coordination with its neighboring cells. This is known as functional Syncitium. It's the work in efficient way to pump blood from the heart, and if this coordination breaks down despite individual cells contracting, the heart may not pump at all. And in this case, where the cardiomyocytes contract individually without harmony, without synchronization, this is called ventricular fibrillation, which is a fatal condition. And in this drawing, you can see a bunch of Purkinje fibers among the myocardium of the heart. If you looked at the heart muscle through a microscope, The muscle cells are roughly rectangular, and the individual muscle cells are joined together by their ends by the intercalated disks, the ones you see here magnified here. It's a line that connects cardio myocytes together, and in each myofibril in each myofibril of the heart, there are proteins, contractile proteins called actin and myosin. They slide over each other to produce the contraction, and arranged in a functional unit of the heart, which is the sarcomere. It's the fundamental contractile unit of the muscle cells. And this what gives the heart muscle the striations, by the way, as you can see here. The space between, or the distance between two Z lines, is the sarcomere in this drawing. This arrangement of fibrils gives the heart muscle its striped or the striated appearance, so it resembles the skeletal muscle. And the striations are caused by the eye bands, which are the light color, as you can see here, and it's composed mainly of actin. These are the areas of actin, and A bands in the middle, composed of mainly of myosin, because there is actin too, but mainly of myosin, which are the thick myofibrils. That's why it appears darker in color than the eye bands, which are formed by actin, which are thin myofibrils. This gives the heart its striations. Also, the cardiomyocytes has T tubules. They are pouches of the cell membrane, as you can see here. The T tubule between two terminal cisternae. The T tubule runs from the cell surface to the cell's interior to ensure efficiency of contraction. Unlike skeletal muscle cells, the cardiomyocytes, majority of these cells contain only one nucleus, not multinucleated like the skeletal muscles. Also, because of the continuous, of course, action of the heart, it needs lots of energy. This is derived from a presence of many mitochondria, which provide the energy needed for the cell in the form of adenosine triphosphate, and this makes the heart muscle highly resistant to fatigue. If we discuss a little the T tubules, they are microscopic tubes that run from the cell surface, like mentioned before, attached to the cell membrane, or continuous with the cell membrane actually. So it's composed of the same bilayer of phospholipids, and they are open at the cell surface to the exterior, to the extracellular fluid that surrounds the cell. And the T tubules in the cardiac muscle are much bigger and wider than those in the skeletal muscle. They join together in the center of the cell, and inside the cell they lie close to the cell's internal calcium stores, which are the sarcoplasmic reticulum. As you can see here, this is the sarcoplasmic reticulum. These are the T tubules running in between the two terminal cisternae of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and they are together, they are called the triad, as we will discuss later. The function of T tubules transmits in a rapid way the electrical impulse. The electrical impulse is the action potential generated from the cell surface to the cell's core, and they also help in regulating the concentration of calcium within the cell in the process known as excitation contraction coupling. Other connections between the cardio microsites, they are intercalated disks between the sarcolemma of the cardiomyocytes. These connections contain gap junctions and desmosomes. There are special types of cell connection, and they form together the cardiac Syncitium. It's a network of cardiomyocytes connected by intercalated disks, enables rapid transmission of electrical impulse through the network, so ensuring the heart muscle act in a coordinated way. There is an atrial Syncitium and a ventricular Syncitium connected by cardiac connection fibers. Now, at these intercalated disks, the electrical resistance is very low to allow for free diffusion of ions, so the rapid spread of electrical impulse all over the heart. When contracting, the Syncitium obeys the all or none law. It means that it either contracts or none at all. Under the light microscope, the intercalated disks, as seen here, they appear as thin, dark staining lines dividing adjacent cardiac muscle cells. The intercalated disks run perpendicular to the direction of the muscle fibers. Now, there are differences between the atria and ventricles. Of course, the differences because they both have different task. The atria is to deliver blood to the ventricles, and ventricles to deliver blood to the lungs and the rest of the body. Because the circuit is bigger through the ventricles, the myocardium found in the ventricles is thick to allow for forceful contractions, much thicker than that of the atria. And regarding the individual myocytes, the ventricular cardiomyocytes are longer and wider with a denser T-tubule network. This is expected because of the amount of work laid on them. And the ion channels differ between chambers, the atria and ventricles, I mean, in the aspect that it has longer action potential durations and effective refractory periods found in the ventricles. Clinical significance. The heart diseases are called the cardiomyopathies, and the most common condition of cardiomyopathy, it's called the coronary artery disease, in which there is affection of the lumen of the heart, of the coronary arteries, narrowing of the lumen, or either occlusion of the lumen. When the lumen is narrowed to partially restrict the blood flow, this is called the angina pectoris, and it may be done by result of spasm of the coronary arteries, so relieved after the relief of the spasm. But if the narrowing is persistent, instead of having pain during exertion relieved by rest in case of angina, pain stays in the heart, and the narrowing is turned into a complete block. This results in restriction of blood flow through the vessels and leads to a case called myocardial infarction or heart attack. occurs, and this is harmful to the walls of the heart. If it's not relieved by medication or percutaneous coronary intervention, for example, or stenting or surgery, then the heart muscle may become permanently scarred or damaged. Also, a specific cardiomyopathy can cause heart muscle to become abnormally thick or hypertrophy. It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or abnormally large called dilated cardiomyopathy, or abnormally stiff called restrictive cardiomyopathy. Some of these conditions are caused by genetic mutations and can be inherited. Also, the heart muscle is liable to get inflamed. This is called myocarditis, commonly caused by a viral infection, or as a result of rheumatic fever, which is an autoimmune disease. Also, the heart muscle can be damaged by drugs such as alcohol and long-standing hypertension, which is elevation of the blood pressure. The conditions can cause damage to the heart so that the pumping action of the heart is reduced. If the heart isn't capable of meeting the demands of the body for blood, this is called as heart failure. I hope you got the maximum benefit from this lecture, and thank you very much for watching.